So just keeping that in mind, then what I want to start now with is okay, we've got the amazing 4 out of 10 idea for the photovoltaic cell, but let's just keep that aside. Let's say I want to start a company and I don't have an idea. So that's the first spot you would start with. And there are two schools of thought when you're coming up with an idea to start a company. The first school of thought is something that Peter Thiel espouses as well in Zero to One and Clayton Christensen in Innovator's Dilemma, where they argue that it's much better for you to start a new market. So in Peter Thiel's world, you go from 0 to 1, you create a market where none existed, and you end up establishing a monopoly in that market. So you get the prime move advantage and you have a monopoly over it. And that's a long term solution. And that will give you much better gains down the line. It'll be much harder initially, but that is the effort to take. And the other school of thought is that the first option is very risky, very hard to do. You can't just create a new market. Often you think you're creating a market where none exists or people are not interested or the value you think that you're trying to create doesn't exist. And it's much easier to not reinvent the wheel, but take an existing market where you know the rules are established and you know the game theory of it, and you just, instead of going from 0 to 1, you go from 1 to 1.5. You make an incremental change in what already exists. And notoriously, Google wasn't the first search engine, Facebook wasn't the first social network, Amazon wasn't the first online marketplace. So where do you stand on this? What do you think is a better school of thought when you're coming up with an idea for a company?
Well, I don't think it's like strict and that applies to like everywhere around the world in that same way for the concept. I think what Peter Thiel was focusing on within the book is more one. It's more geared towards very developed markets like the U.S. And the second thing is that he was focusing on groundbreaking companies that in the right market at the right time. How if they want to have a massive impact and scale at different levels, that's what you'd need to kind of like follow in terms of school of thought. But that does not apply to, if I start a company today, is it going to succeed or not? One, not everyone wants to start a company or startup that necessarily scales from nothing to billions of dollars. And there are a lot of successful companies that have an audience and have a very good product and very good teams and are profitable and are not massive companies that ate up a huge market or whatever. There's very niche, a lot of niche companies that solve a very like kind of specific problem in a specific industry and build good customers. But if you want to build what he refers to is, yeah, like the top 10%, or the if you want to build companies that end up being very large companies and very successful companies, then you need to follow that kind of like school of thought where you go into a space and you take it from 0 to 1, and you end up monopolizing that space. And what are the ingredients or the things you need to follow in order to get there, such as a lot of the big famous companies that we know about. That does not apply whatsoever to starting a company in the Middle East at all. So because we're not in a developed market, a lot of this will is very likely to fail. You can take some kind of like parts of these ingredients or recipes and try to adapt them to here. But here is the opposite way of things, because you can look at who actually took a market from 0 to 1, like for example Uber in the US, and then you try to kind of, and these are the startups that work best here. Is this always going to be the case forever? It shouldn't be, and I hope not. But right now, most companies that are built out of the region are built to service this region. They're not built to service a global market. So you rarely see companies, and I don't like that much. I would rather see like more, especially now that the ecosystem is more developed, to start seeing more companies coming out of, let's say, Dubai, that are actually competing globally and have customers globally, not just in the Middle East or the surrounding regions. But currently, this is not the case. And the other alternative works for the region. So it works to take a concept, that worked somewhere else and implement it here and localize it in a certain way. So to summarize it, it's there's a few things to keep in mind. One is, what region are you in? Are you in the US or another market like the Middle East or Europe or India or Asia or whatever? Um, like China now is a market where you can start something and you can follow the 0 to 1 as well, kind of approach. That's the first question. The second question: are you trying to build, or are you wanting to build something that solves a very big problem, and can end up being eating up a huge market or a huge space and becoming a monopoly in it. The notion that everyone wants that, I don't know. Maybe definitely not everyone. Very few are built for that, and it takes a lot to actually like get to that. Um, and I don't think everyone wants it either. So I think there's a lot of people that are happy with building a successful company that focuses on a specific smaller problem, and could be a tech startup as well. Not every tech startup has to solve a big problem and take over a big. Even in the U.S., you have a lot of startups that are solving uh, smaller problems, coming in to solve things that, and there's tools every day that are coming out to do things like that. So something to make your video recording better, something to make your podcast recording better, something to uh, improve Excel sheets, for example, or